Thank you for that reminder. I've got to ask people who know more about this than I do why it doesn't record automatically anymore. For 3 months, we were recording automatically, and now I have to remember again. And even though I have my pink little sticky right behind Wilson here that says record, I never look at it and I never remember. If I put it right on top of Wilson, it would be better. Alrighty, so we're working on that first spot of database as a listing source, making sure that people understand what the opportunity in the market is, right? Now you can do that one of two ways, right? Mary's choice was to simply say, who do you know that might be looking to take advantage of that opportunity, right? Remember that from a script perspective, who do you know is always more effective than do you know anyone, right? Do you know someone? Yes, Kimberly, just give me a second. Do you know someone is yes or no, right? Who do you know prompts a name. It's like you get to the end of that and now you're sitting waiting for a name, right? So make sure that script work comes into play so that you're asking the question the most effective way possible. KT, go for it.
So one of the things that I love to have conversation is, and I forget, it was the gentleman from Westport Mortgage who mentioned this on one of our 4:30 calls. The commercial record actually published an article, right, of 10,000 people, New Yorkers, had an address change from New York to Connecticut over the last 90 days, right? And so I actually posted that article in my Facebook feed, and now people are asking me about that. And so, you know, it's one thing to say it's like, you know, a seller's market. It's one thing to say, you know, we're seeing people coming from New York, but when you actually have I just told somebody that about 15 minutes ago, and their mouth dropped. They're like, 10,000? I said, yes. 10,000 people are coming to Connecticut looking for a home. And then to Mary's point, who do you know? Is like, you know, because now people are thinking, if they thought dollar signs before, they're like, oh, yes, I got this. You know what I mean? And I lost out on a multiple offer bid yesterday. The house is on the market for less than 12 hours. They had 8 offers.
Wow, love it.
Six of them were above asking price.
So Kimberly brings up another one of the 10 lead sources. Let's just pivot to that real quick, right? Are you utilizing the fact that we are desperately seeking inventory on social media to attract sellers, right? If source number one is your database and you're going into your database to make sure you're delivering that information, you can do that by having phone conversations. You can do that by mass email. You can do that via text or however you're delivering that information into your database. However, the other way to deliver that to your database plus is to make sure you're utilizing that same information on social media like Kimberly just explained. Post an article, post a question, right? I love the use of social media to generate conversations, right? Even if it's, hey, were you aware that this is going on, right? Private message me for more information. And then people start, no, you're kidding. What does that mean? How does it work? What is that for me? Right? And now all of a sudden you've generated a conversation around something that you wanted to have a conversation around anyway. And I do believe that when you start to utilize social media as a means of projecting this information, the market-driven information, which to me is always the most powerful version of marketing, right? Because it's objective and it's truthful. So when you're using market stats as the marketing piece, when you're using market stats as the conversation generator, you well could have listing opportunities dialing into you, which is the whole idea. Make sense? The other script I like a lot in your database if you're looking for some different different thoughts, who do you know that's having trouble selling their home? Right? If you're doing the care call that leads to the business call, the business ask could be, hey, before I let you go, because we have such a shortage of inventory and an influx of buyers, who do you know that's having trouble selling their home that I maybe could assist? Because guys, what do we know about people who are having trouble selling their home right now? If you're having trouble selling your home right now, what does that say?
Pricing.
Not being serviced.
Pricing.
Yeah, exactly right. It's not priced properly. It's just simply not priced properly. The conversations are not being had there that need to be had from an education perspective to help sellers make better decisions, right? Because everything else, even stuff that's slightly priced above the market is going under agreement. Right? And so remember, even if your new listing is one that you kind of like slapped lipstick on that pig and threw it on the market, it will go if it's priced properly. It might even go if it's priced 10% too high. And so that's something I want everyone to hear as listing agents, is that if you have properties that are not accepted, or they're not taking offers or not receiving offers right now, you are probably more than 10% off in terms of pricing and what the market is telling us. And if it were me, if you've been on the market for 14 days or 14 months, I would get off this Zoom call when we are done, and I would pick up the phone and set a Zoom appointment with that seller, because you're not doing them or you any good by just letting it sit there, right? Somebody say right, so I feel better about myself.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Right, but the point I'm looking to make, and this is not necessarily a pricing discussion, but the point I want to make is one of the ways that you will be able to dive in and take advantage of the win on the listing side that is available to you in the next 90 days is if you will let go of all of the other subjective conversations that sometimes go on in our heads around why properties don't sell. And take a hard line that there is one reason and one reason alone why a property doesn't sell, especially when the market is spiraling upwards, right? And hold the line on that. Be willing to have those firm, tough conversations. That doesn't mean be mean, it doesn't mean be rude, and it doesn't mean throw customer service out the window. I never said any of those things, right? But I did say, know what's going on and be willing to communicate that to the sellers. Anything else from a database perspective that any of you are doing successfully to lure listing opportunities? Because what we're really looking for are how many listing appointments can you find in all of these sources? Anybody doing anything else besides constant communication, getting the stuff out on social media so it's there for everyone, calling and asking specifics? What else?
So today I literally sent my first weekly email newsletter ever, and I'm going to continue doing it weekly. And I heard a great idea from Tama last week. I think it was in the listing class that Dan put on about incentivizing referrals. I think she offered like $100 for a seller referral lead. And if they list, you'll get the gift card or something like that.
Yeah, so that is an awesome idea. I will offer you a caution that you just need to be really cautious, because the state walks a really tough line on paying non-licensees. Here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say that you should do what you think you need to do to grow your business. You should stay on this side of the line and be really prepared for the, oh my goodness, I had no idea apology if it comes back to you with a slap on the wrist, right? That is not me as your broker encouraging you to go and color outside the lines. What I am saying is that we've had people who have offered flat screen TVs for referrals that made its way to the state, and so then the state calls me and says, okay, this is problematic. Right? We live inside of a no inducements state, sadly. So $100 gift card, am I going to make a big to-do about that? I'm not. And yet, yes.
Right. So no gift? I mean, we can't offer any type of incentive?
An incentive for referrals to non-licensees, according to the state strict rules? No.
No.
No kind of gift card?
No.
According to the state, I'll take the answer on this one. According to the state, any kind of inducement for referrals being paid to a non-licensee is prohibited. Make sense?
No, it don't make sense.
Well, I agree, and yet that is the rule.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on from database, unless somebody else has another thought about database. And Chris, I didn't mean to pee on your parade there because as I said, the idea is a valid one. I want you to understand the pros and cons of sometimes when things like that are done to a small group inside of your database or simply privately to your database hardly ever get noticed. When you take that same thing and you blast it all over Facebook, that's when it gets noticed. And the reason it gets noticed is because your competitors notice it and say, well, I'm not supposed to do that, so why is he allowed to do that? And that's how it all gets cycled back to the state and then back to me, right? Understand that we live inside of an industry where the people who set the rules of our industry take full advantage of the fact that we will rat each other out faster than we will say our middle name. It's just the way it works, right? And my experience tells me that those entities are correct. My personal opinion is if people spent more time actually growing businesses and not worrying about what other people were doing, right, they would have bigger businesses. Okay, so we talked about database. Please don't, remember it's the #1 source, so don't leave that off of your list. If you've decided I can't wait to hear the other sources and you're not going to dive into your database, you will not have the results that others who choose their database first will get, because it is the #1 source for most agents across the country to find listing opportunities. #2 is expireds, right? And so that's just not #2 on our list. It's the #2 source of all listing leads for most agents across the country. What are the opportunities? So let's talk about that, because for a number of weeks, we had kind of stepped back from the whole hot and heavy on expireds thing, right? We erred on the side of care calls. You heard me say about midway through the shutdown period that I thought it was time to shift into a care expired call. Start calling expireds because you care about how they are. And oh, by the way, I also saw that your home came off the market. Was that on purpose? Do you still need to sell? What are your circumstances? Would it be helpful for us to have a consultation? And personally, I still think, so for those of you who made that pivot a number of weeks ago, awesome. For those of you who were still waiting for permission, I'm giving that to you if you're really looking for it from me. I'm not sure why you would look to me for permission, but I'm certainly giving that to you. Go ahead and dive back into expireds. One of the things Gary said to us last night was, in states where the governors did not deem real estate as essential, like he just didn't get it. People need to buy houses and people need to sell houses. We provide an essential service and a really important essential service at that. And so expireds that show up, just like before all this happened, they're in a bad way. They had a goal of getting their home sold. Most of them thought they would be in their new whatever scenario by now. And so they have a problem and they're waiting to hear from you because you have a solution to their problem. Guys, that's all an expired call is. And when you combine that with a care call nowadays, to say, hey, it's Rick Scott with Keller Williams Realty, just wanted to call and check in to see how you and your family were faring during these crazy times. And have a little conversation around that. Well, that sounds great. Hey, before I let you go, I did notice that your home came off the market overnight. I'm curious, are you still needing to sell your home? Great, I'm curious. Had you sold your home, where were you headed? Oh, wow, what was taking you there? Oh, interesting. And when did you need to be there? Right, that's just the 4 basic opening lines of any expired script. They're all motivation based, right? They give you all the ammunition you need. By the way, line 5 should be, wow, I'm so glad I called today. It sounds like we have a lot to talk about. I have some time later this afternoon via Zoom at either 5 or 6 o'clock. If you and all decision makers are available for a quick conversation about how we can get your home back on the market and get it sold. Can I say one thing about expireds? Well, that's probably a lie. Can I say one additional thing about expireds? Guys, if you just listen to what I just said and are making a decision in your head that that's not for you because it's too salesy, I really want you to go find your license. I want you to read what your license says. Your license doesn't say marketing professional.
Nope.
It says salesperson,
Right.
right? And so sometimes to be successful as a salesperson, you have to say things that salespeople say. That doesn't mean be manipulative, doesn't mean be a used car salesperson, it doesn't mean, which is kind of unfair of me because maybe that's a judgment I shouldn't make about used car salespeople. However, I encourage you not to judge what I just said, because it is a valid service that we offer people who need that service. Look at it as coming from contribution. There's nothing manipulative about those 5 lines. You're just calling and asking if people need your help, right? And some of them will say, yes, I need your help. And some of them will say, no, I don't need your help. And either answer is okay, as long as we've done our job to make sure that we've made a care call and offered our help. Don't be attached to the result. Be attached to the activity. And so for new expireds, I think that, again, for those of you who were doing them and then stopped, if you haven't plugged back into that, I encourage you to plug back in. Make it a care expired call and start diving back into that. People need your help. And let me say it this way. People who have no idea who you are need your help. We have to be certain that we're not just relying on people who know who we are to build a business, right? You can only build a business so far. You don't get to scale with people you know. You need to start working in strangers to start getting to scale. What's the other opportunity with expireds that we haven't talked about that we should probably put on the table? That's available to everyone. Come on, someone knows the answer. I know it.
Oh,
Go ahead,
no.
take a guess. Take a wild
Rent?
guess. Say it again.
Rent?
So if we're talking about calling daily new expireds, what's the other opportunity with expireds?
Old expireds.
Thank you, JD. I appreciate that. Old expireds. Guys, it's 2020. It's June of 2020. In my opinion, you have a decade's worth of expireds that you could be on the phone with. A decade. Because what was happening 10 years ago? My goodness, were we in the middle of it, right? For those
Yeah.
of you who were in business 10 years ago, do you remember being in the middle of it? Because it was right around now that we all looked around and said, oh man, I think we probably should throw in the towel and say, yeah, I think things are way different now, right? Even though it had been going on for 3 years. That's okay. It took the sellers until about 2012 to figure that out. So we were ahead of the curve by having it take us till 2009 or 10. But 10 years ago, we were in the middle of that market correction, of that shift, of that drop in equity in Fairfield County, an average of 18%. Right? If you don't know that number, it's an important number to know if you're dialing old expireds. In the last shift, on average, Fairfield County lost 18% of its value. Now again, that's an average, so if you were in the higher end, you lost more than that. If you were in the lower end, you were a little more insulated. But on average, the county itself fell 18%. So if you're dialing into people who couldn't or wouldn't sell their homes in 2009, 10, 11, 12, there's a conversation to be had there. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I saw that you came off the market back in 2011. That was a struggle back then, huh? I'm curious, did you receive offers? What pulled you off the market? Because most people will tell you frustration or low offers that I wasn't willing to take. Got it. Knowing that we lost 18% on average in Fairfield County back then, and that we've had a decade of some kind of recovery, and that now is the very first time in that decade where we're starting to see some kind of supply and demand benefit for sellers, does it make sense at all for you and I to have a conversation about getting your property back on the market? My guess is that you'll find appointments there. Again, it's an education conversation. Don't look at it as a trolling conversation. You're educating people about what happened to them back then and what the opportunity is to make it different this time around. They don't know those numbers. They don't recognize that this is an opportunity. So by coming from contribution and simply making those phone calls and connecting with those people and offering them the opportunity that exists, you're like their knight in shining armor. See how that works?
Yes.
Okay, number 3. Any questions about the expired side of things?
Rick,
Yes, ma'am, Mary.
just a quick one, and you don't have to answer it now, but I'd love to know how to research this without it taking such an exorbitant amount of time for me by the time I finally get to make the phone call, because maybe I'm doing too much.
Yeah, so there is an answer to that nowadays. That's a different answer than it was a couple of years ago. And the answer nowadays is hire a service to pay for your expireds. Have some kind of a service that seeks out your expireds, gets the numbers, scrubs the numbers, and delivers them to you every morning. Right? If you're doing old expireds, that might not necessarily be your solution. However, if you're doing everyday expireds, the information that we used to utilize is harder and harder and harder to come by nowadays, right? And so the people that I know that are doing expireds every day and doing it successfully, they pay some kind of a service. They pay Mojo, or they pay Vulcan, or they pay the Red X, or they pay, what are the ones that I'm missing, guys who are doing it? Are those the main ones? Yeah. And if you're doing just expireds, there's not a huge cost to that. Here's the other thing that I kind of think is cool about that. When you're paying for numbers for expireds, as a business owner, you now have a whole lot more reason to make certain that you're getting return there, because it's not just your time, right? Too many of us look at time as not money instead of time being money, and we're willing to spend all this time as long as I don't have to spend $1. Well, I might, in this scenario, spend the $1 so that you're not spending the time, because you'll actually make more money long term. Does that answer that, Mary?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Number 3, for sale by owner opportunities. Now, I know there's not a ton of for sale by owners in Fairfield County, and I would agree with that. Compared to other markets, we don't necessarily have a huge volume of people going for sale by owner. Why is that, by the way? Do you have any idea why that is? Because there is a reason.
Why?
Generally speaking, the reason is that in Fairfield County, Connecticut, which is one of the most affluent counties in the country, most people, most of the time, are more willing and able to pay for that service. That's just a reality of where we live and work, right? If you work the rest of the state, you'll find that for sale by owner opportunities actually go up. But in Fairfield County, it's just not a huge source. However, I put it on the list because it's not a non-existent source. There are some opportunities there, right? And so are you driving around and taking note of those signs? Are you online at FSBO or forsalebyowner.com to see what properties are listed on those websites that you might be able to give a call to, drop a package off to, stop and ring a doorbell, right? Just remember, if you're stopping and ringing a doorbell, it looks like this today. Right? So don't take that off the table just because we have fewer. Well, if there are 3 in Fairfield County and you get 2 of those 3, well, is that 2 more pieces of inventory that you wouldn't have had if you didn't have this source on your list that you were putting together an action plan around? Make sense? So I'm going to say something. I'm going to say something that I might regret saying, but I'm going to say it into this group as well. I said it in a mastermind about 2 weeks ago. If you're on this call and you don't really consider yourself a listing agent, and that's only because you haven't done it a lot, right? One of the things that Gary was talking to us about in our last mastermind a couple of weeks ago was the concept of do whatever it takes. And he was coaching someone who was in the business, who then left the business for a while. I'm not sure if it was due to an illness or whatnot. Then she came back about 3 years later and said to him, look, I'm stuck. Like I've been gone for 3 years. It might as well have been 30 years. I'm like out of the business. People that I knew have moved on and they've replaced me as their number 1 realtor and la, 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 la. And he said, okay, well, so the first thing I want you to focus on is go take listings. And she came back like a week later and 2 weeks later and said, I'm struggling. I'm just not finding opportunities. And he said, well, have you done whatever it takes? She said, well, I think so. And he said, okay, well, on my way to work, I drive past 2 for sale by owner properties. Here's where they are. Go list them. And she said, well, you know, those are like the hardest to list because like they don't want to pay a commission. And he said, so then go list them for free. Get your sign up. Prime the wheel. Get the momentum going. Use those listings as a way to go and showcase yourself and get other listings. Use those listings to attract more buyers. Use those listings that you're doing for free to host open houses and find both listings and buyers. If you don't have inventory, do whatever it takes to obtain inventory. And sometimes that means giving it away. Now, I do not want anyone to leave this call and said, Rich said we should go and list properties for 0%, because that is not what I said. What I said was, if you're in a rut, I'll tell you a quick story. I can remember a time, and I think it was right after Debbie and I opened the Richfield Market Center, because we had spent almost a year doing almost nothing else but getting these businesses off the ground. And once they were off the ground, we looked back at our pendings list for the thing that was actually still paying us an income, which was our listings and sales business. And there wasn't a whole lot there. And we kind of panicked. And so we hit the ground, we hit the phones, we found opportunities for ourselves. And we had this one listing appointment up on Ives Court. Do you remember this? Ives Court, where we went in, we were strong, we were going to list that property. We brought them back to the office, and the woman came in, she sat down across from us, and she said, look, I like you the best. I think she was talking to me, by the way. I like you too the best. Here's the problem. I just was across the street and I met with Nita Moeller, and she said she'd do it for 4.5%. So will you do it for 4.5%? And we said, thank you for asking. No, we brought out all of our objection handlers that we were always so good at, because when Debbie and I were listing together, we listed most of our things at least 5.5 or 6%. And this woman was just having none of it. She said, you know what, again, I get it. For me, this is a strictly financial decision, right? We hauled out the objection handler of, are you looking for the cheapest agent or the most net? Let's do the number. This woman was not having it. And she was just about to say, thank you so much. I'm going to go back across the street and just list for 4.5% with Nita Moeller. And we said, no, 4.5% is awesome. Sign here, right? Because we had no inventory. We had to give it away, even though we might not have done that if we had more inventory, because we needed to create momentum. We needed to build that inventory, right? And so we did it for less.
I would add this to that. 4.5% is abhorrent to me. I hate going anything below 5%, hate it. And the point is really important that Rick is making, which is whatever it takes means sometimes whatever it takes. So don't be afraid of it. Don't make yourself miserable about it. Take it, make it pay, and then rebuild yourself and go strong.
In a retail scenario, it's called a loss leader, right? In retail, sometimes they sell stuff for way less than what they really need to sell it for to make a dime.
Yeah.
To get people in the store so they buy other things that their margin is bigger on. That's all that Gary was pushing out, and that's all I'm pushing out to you. And I'm using it as it relates to for sale by owners simply because if you need another sign someplace to generate more business, a for sale by owner will put your sign out if you promise them that you will do it for free. Now, of course, if you have to pay somebody else, they need to cover the buyer agency commission, right? But your side, do it for free or offer them a flat $500. Please don't go and advertise that on Facebook that you'll do things for $500, because even if that's something you choose in your business, you can't paint all of us with that same brush. So be really clear about what I'm saying. I'm not saying go and be the cheapest on the block. I'm not saying go and be a limited service listing agent. What I'm saying is one-off, if you need inventory, for sale by owners are an interesting path to that. And if you don't want to go the tried and true path of wearing them out over time, I can teach you that. Try getting a sign up there by offering to do it for free. I will say we might have to exclude that from the 135 listings that we need to take in order to have our agent stimulus kick in. But hey, you know what? Maybe not. Number 4, open houses. Number 4 is open houses. I will tell you that before March 13th or 15th hit, there were more of you who were telling me that your source of listing, the new listing you just took, was an open house than I have ever experienced in 21 years in real estate. the last 12 months prior, 12 to 18 months prior to this March, so many more of you were finding listing opportunities at public open houses. Now that that's coming back, I want you to add it back to your list. Now, again, you and your sellers have to be comfortable, and you and your sellers need to understand all the protocols. I'm not saying jump back into an activity that would put anyone at risk. However, some of you have been chomping at the bit to get back to those public open houses. And what we know from those of you who are doing them with all the safety protocols in place is that there is definitely an appetite for the public for public open houses. Agents that I know that are doing public open houses right now do not sit for an hour by themselves. They are busy. They have people, right? If you want to limit exposure, do an appointment only open house. I'll be here from noon until 1. Please text or call ahead for a 10-minute slot or a 15-minute slot, right? You can parse people out and do things safely. However, if you're looking for another listing opportunity, start climbing back into public open houses because there is definitely opportunity there. Number 5, door knocking or neighborhood nurturing. And again, some of you hear that and think, oh, where do we live? In Kansas? I'm not doing that. No offense to Kansas. And that's okay, right? Not every single one of these will be for every single one of you. However, remember this, successful people are willing to do what everyone else is unwilling to do, right? And so if door knocking is one of those things that makes sense for you, go door knock a condo complex. See who's willing to sell. Go door knock an expired instead of getting them on the phone. If you're afraid to make a phone call, go talk to them in person. Number 6. Number 6 is geographic farming and direct mail. And number 6 is geographic farming and direct mail for this reason. There are some of you who have been nurturing neighborhoods via farming for some time. This is not necessarily an opportunity, a today opportunity if you haven't been doing that, right? Because the results from that typically take 12 to 24 months of consistency. So this is mostly on this list as an opportunity today for those of you who have continued to farm and nurture certain areas or demographics inside of your communities or territories that you serve. It's on this list to encourage you to now add something to that mailing. If you're not calling behind the mailings that you do, you're seeing a massive drop-off in results, right? Understand that communities or areas that are farmed once a month for 12 to 24 months have a 1 to 2% return rate. So if you're farming an area of 400 people and you've done it for a year and you've done it consistently every single month and you've received 4 inquiries, which might not be appointments, that's inquiries. That's somebody actually raised their hand and said, yes, I'm getting this, I have a question. You're doing better than the average bear. However, if you start calling behind that, the return goes up exponentially. Exponentially. So if you have that opportunity and you've been doing that farming, I encourage you, start dialing into it. Or if it's a close-knit community, if it's a condo complex or whatnot that you've been mailing to, do a walk around, do some door knocking. Just don't shake hands. Do a wave from at least 3 feet back, right? If you haven't been planting these seeds, I encourage you to start. This kind of thing can be done very inexpensively nowadays, and it's a perfect opportunity for you to plant a little garden over here, just in case a year from now or 24 months from now, some of your main lead sources start to get a little dry, right? And in the meantime, every once in a while, something might crop up from your farm. That's a cherry on top. But you've got to plant the seeds in order to reap the rewards from it. The point is, reap the rewards now by calling and or doing walkarounds if you've been doing this. If you haven't been doing this, find a 200 or 400, 500 area farm and just start doing it. And oh, by the way, if you're going to start doing it, pattern of success. They want stats and pattern of success. Please don't send recipes. They can go online and get recipes. Recipes does not solidify you as a real estate professional. It's confusing to the people who are receiving it. Chris.
For that too, you can also digitally farm at the same time. So you can
Yeah,
literally target that exact farm area with social ads and just post that stuff as well. So they're getting it paper, phone call, digital when they're scrolling Facebook, etc.
100%. Love it. Number 7, online lead sources, right? Which is pretty much where Chris just went. The things that we've been talking about, there are online versions of those things, right? The online kind of touches on for sale by owner, it touches on social media, it touches on database, it touches on door knocking and geographic farming. Just remember that there's 2 versions of each of these things. The online version is oftentimes less expensive and more automatic, typically costs less, which would be less expensive, right? It's been a long day already. And you'll spend less money. No, I'm kidding. How many different ways can we say cost less? That's the new mastermind, right? But just remember there's that online version. The other thing I want you to remember is you can fish online. What I mean by that is, what are the opportunities you have around target marketing people with online opportunities? For example, say a property comes on in the middle of a neighborhood. Let's take Westmoreland in Ridgefield or Westover in Stamford to keep it W based, right? One of those two, a new property comes on the market. Are you utilizing online resources to figure out which of those 50 neighbors is next? Because statistically, when a sign goes up in a neighborhood, if it's a really defined neighborhood, statistically what happens is another 1 or 2 typically pop up in the next 6 to 8 weeks, right? So are you utilizing online resources to figure out who are the 50 people around this listing I should be contacting in whatever way you choose to contact them to make sure they know their neighbor just went on the market? Whether it's your listing or not, you're just giving them information about a new listing that went on. Statistics show that oftentimes 2 or 3 of the neighbors are looking to do the exact same thing once a property goes on the market, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Curious if you're one of them or if you know someone who is. Make sense? All right, number 8, investors and builders. Investors and builders. I can't tell you how many calls, texts, emails, and postcards I have received, not only as the owner of a whole bunch of multifamilies in Waterbury and Naugatuck, because my phone's been ringing off the hook on those. People lead generating to owners of multifamilies, and they were smart, calling me saying things like, I'm certain that you're not getting paid rent. Why would you want to own this property anymore? Let us list it for you. And the simple reality is that's a little bit of a lie, because the people who were calling me were not agents. They were investors. And I think that's a missed opportunity. You guys could be dialing me as well, saying, let me get this sold for you. Let me put you out of your misery. There's no reason to necessarily be a landlord when people are losing their jobs left and right. I'm certain that you've struggled. right? Those are that was what was coming to me. Not only have I received that kind of call on my own investment properties, I've received numerous calls from investors on my house, on my primary residence. My question is, why isn't that us? Why aren't we looking for a way to make sure that we're in between that transaction? Allowing investors to squeeze us out is as dangerous as allowing Zillow to squeeze us out. It's both a version of us not stepping up and doing the job that we're called upon to do, which is be in the middle of a buyer and a seller, do the lead generation, and getting lazy and stepping back and letting other people in there, right? So be really cautious around that, right? Run a report in the MLS about non-owner occupied properties. Start dialing through those, right? As an idea. Someone was asking me the other day about builders, and they were kind of adamant that there's just no building lots. Okay. So if that is true, I don't know that that's true, but if that is true, what's a builder's next best opportunity?
Tear down.
Yeah, buy a house and tear it down. So have you identified properties that are coming on in the lower end that you could then match a builder with? Are you identifying properties that look like they might be opportunities for tear downs, contacting some builders to say, hey, are you interested in some kind of a tear down? I might have an opportunity in this area of this town. And when they say, yeah, I would look at that, great, then make the phone call to the homeowner. Hey, I have a builder who's interested in building in this neighborhood. You don't have to call and say, hey, your house looks like crap from the outside. I thought it might be good for a tear down. That's not a good script, right? But instead, you could call and say, I have a builder looking to build in this neighborhood. And I'm just checking with you and your neighbors to see if there was any opportunity that you saw to put your home on the market or to sell it to a builder. That's an opportunity for a listing that you could maybe double side them when you put those two people together, right? But you see, you have to be thinking like a builder then. What is a builder looking for? And then go and find it for them. Make sense? And lastly is agent-to-agent referrals. Look at that, it's 1:59. We're going to skate in right on time. Agent-to-agent referrals. Again, for those of you who have no agent relationships across the country, this one is kind of like, well, yeah, that's like I'm a day late, dollar short on that one. But here's the reason I'm bringing it up. If you don't have valid relationships across the country, now is the time you need to be building them. If you do have valid relationships across the country, I would be on the phone with them and just remind them where we live. If you have valid relationships across the country, my script would be, hey, Mary, it's Rick Scott. How's San Francisco? Oh, I'm so glad, or whatever. Well, San Francisco's not doing so hot right now. So maybe Mary's up in Maine where things are okay. How's the Portland market? Hey, look, and I just wanted to check in with you and remind you that I specialize in Fairfield County, Connecticut. Right now, we are seeing a surge of people from the New York, New Jersey, tri-state area. And I just wanted to remind all of my referral partners that I am here to help and service anyone who might be looking not just necessarily in Connecticut, but coming to Connecticut. So anyone you might know in those areas, or anyone who's being relocated to New York, who now needs to find a different place to live because they're afraid to live in the city, I just wanted to remind you that I'm available to you. And we've got great opportunities going on here in Connecticut. I'm thrilled for your referrals. Make sense? And for those of you who don't have those networks built, some of you have heard this. I'm going to give you just a quick reminder about the path that I chose when I was new to the business. And whether you're new or not, if you've never done this, it's an exercise that I think you should be doing between now and the end of the year. And that is take out a map of the United States and circle the 30 primary markets across the country that aren't our market, and make a beeline to Zillow. I know I said the Z word twice in this whole conversation. Sorry about that. But go to Zillow and find the top 2 listing agents in each of those 30 markets. Sorry, the top 3 listing agents. And call each of those listing agents. And the script goes something like this. Hey, Kathy, it's Rick Scott with Keller Williams Realty in Connecticut. I couldn't help but notice that your business is booming. How are things going in Seattle? And Kathy says, oh, they're spectacular. Things are good. That's great. Hey, listen, Kathy, I was curious. Do you have at least 2, I'm curious, would you mind if I added you to my referral network for any time I had a client coming from the New York tri-state area over to you in Seattle? Would you mind if I added you to my list on that for inbound referrals? What do you think Kathy's going to say? Right? There's nobody I've ever asked that question to who said, oh, I'm all full up. Thank you so much. That doesn't happen. So she says, yeah, sure, that'd be great. Awesome. I'm going to add you to that now. Hey, listen, Kathy, one last question before I let you go. And I so appreciate your time. Do you have at least 2 agents who you refer business to in the state of Connecticut? And Kathy will most of the time say no, because we live in a small state, guys, right? People aren't like necessarily focused on, ooh, my Connecticut-bound referrals. Because we're not New York, right? We're not a major city. So usually the answer to that is no. But even if they do have somebody, they typically have 1 that they can remember, which is why I ask if they have at least 2. And so when the answer is no, I get to say, great, would you mind adding me to your referral network so that the next time you have someone coming my way, I'm your first phone call? People don't say no to that either. Great, you know what? I'm going to send you an email reminder to do that. I'm going to send you a quick text so I'm in your phone. I am so excited to start passing business back and forth coast to coast, Kathy. I thank you so much for taking my call today. I wish you the absolute best. And if there's anything you ever need over on the East Coast, give me a call. Bye, click. And then I call the next person and the next person. And I do that 3 times in each of the major markets across the country, so that by the time I'm done, I have nearly 100 people who I've spoken to, who I've added to a database that I'm going to just simply send little reminders about who I am and where I work every single month. That starts the flow of business to me. Now, my intention when I was new was to then go back and circle the 30 secondary markets in the country and do that all over again. And then go back and circle the 30 tertiary markets in the country and do that again, so that I ended up with 300 relationships passing me business. I never got past the first 30 markets. But I will tell you, if you're interested in gravy business, because I consider that on-purpose gravy business, right? You're going to create a system that passes you business every once in a while that isn't necessarily going to pay your bills, but it's really nice to have that extra listing or 2 or 3 a year, that extra buyer or 2 or 3 a year from all of those relationships that you create and then cultivate throughout the country. Does that make sense as an idea?
Yes,
Are you willing to do it?
yes.
Well, at least Donna's going to have business.
Fine.
What else you got for me? Any other questions, comments, concerns? Any other sources that are working for you that I left off this list? Here's my thought. Just start here. Because even if we left some things off the list, they're not the major sources. Just start here and start diving into something on this list and do it at a high level. Create a system around it, create consistency around it, create accountability around it. Make sure you have a goal, right? If you're going to dive into database, make sure your goal is that between now and 30 days from now, you've spoken to X number of people in your database using Y script with a return of at least Z appointments. Set those numbers up so that you understand what you need to do and how you need to do it, and then hold yourself accountable to that. And in 30 days, go back and measure whether or not that activity and that system created the results you were looking for. Because you may have to tweak the numbers to have it create the results you were looking for the following 30 days, right? But each and every one of these needs a system around it. It needs a GPS. It needs a 135. It needs an opportunity for you to say, this is the goal. I want 4 listing appointments this month out of this one source. What are the 3 things, the 3 main strategies I'm going to focus on to accomplish that? And what are the 5 action items under each of those 3 main strategies to make sure I get 4 listing appointments out of my database in the next 30 days? That's how you create results. Please don't leave this call and say, wow, there were some decent ideas there. I'll have to get to that. Because I guarantee you it was a waste of your hour and 8 minutes, right? If you're not going to really get clear around what you need to do and start taking those activities, putting them into your calendar and implementing, right? The next 90 days has to be about idea, implementation, strategy, implementation, success, implementation, failure, implementation. Every single thing that comes across your desk and through your brain, you need to take action on. That's how you'll come out a winner in terms of income for 2020. Any last thoughts or comments before we're done? Guys, I hope this was helpful. I hope this gave you a path to start working down. I would love it if each and every one of you would send me an email that says, I'm going to focus on this one or this 2 or these 3 things. Don't make it more than 3 because you won't do it, right? 1, 2, maybe 3. Focus on those areas. And if you want some help drilling down and creating the system around how you're going to attack that source, I'm happy to do that with you. Just shoot me that email and tell me what that source is, and we'll find some time back and forth and we'll get it done.
Thank you, Rick.
As always, it's a pleasure to spend time with you. Don't forget 4:30 today. We're going to talk about phase 2 of our reopening, what that looks like, and some ahas from the Gary Keller Mastermind. See you later.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Rick.